I was in my small kitchen in Charleston, South Carolina, when the phone rang. Outside, rain pounded against the window pane as if to warn me something was coming. My husband's name, Colin, appeared on the screen. I picked up, thinking he was calling to ask about the quarterly tax report I'd been preparing for our business. But no. Colin's voice came through the line, completely unbothered. "I figured you'd rather hear it from me," he said casually, like he was ordering coffee. "I just transferred your inheritance into my name. I'm starting over with someone who actually appreciates me." I froze. That smug, brazen tone. His voice came from somewhere with waves crashing and faint Latin music in the background. "You really should pay more attention to your accounts, Delilah, seriously," Colin chuckled. "You left too many doors open." I said nothing. I simply pulled out a chair and sat down, eyes still on my laptop screen, which was open to our online banking portal. I had logged in to check the statement just before the call came in. The house was filled with the sound of rain, but my mind went blank. Not from panic, from sorting through every detail, every tiny memory of the past 20 years, to find the final piece in a puzzle of betrayal. A woman's laugh echoed through the phone. Young, sharp, confident. A direct hit to the gut. He wasn't even trying to hide it. "I deserve a fresh start, Delilah, with someone who doesn't control everything, who doesn't plan every cent. You always calculate everything." "You're right," I said quietly, my voice cold as ice. "You deserve exactly that." Then I hung up. "My name is Delilah Anderson. I'm 43. I work as a senior accountant at an import copper firm in Charleston. I'm the kind of person who lives by principles. Maybe too cautious, and clearly too trusting. But today that changed. Colin thought he'd landed the perfect strike, that after 2 decades with me, the woman who always counted every bill and every savings statement, he could take the most precious thing and vanish with a girlfriend nearly 15 years younger. What he didn't know was that I'd seen this happen once before. I watched someone in my family lose everything because they trusted the wrong person. And the first real lesson I ever learned about money didn't come from accounting school. It came from my grandmother, who once let her husband mortgage the family land to chase a get-rich scheme. I poured myself a glass of wine, placed my hand on the cold countertop, and felt each second of my marriage cracking apart. I reopened my laptop and checked every layer of my asset protection setup. Colin had just made a huge mistake and he didn't even know it. I met Colin when I was 21, a senior studying accounting at the University of South Carolina. He was a teaching assistant in a marketing class. 4 years older, quick-witted, smooth-talking, and always knew how to make me laugh when I was stressed. Back then, I believed he was ambitious, willing to take risks, to dream big. I didn't realize that sometimes ambition is just a mask for instability and irresponsibility. We got married a year after I graduated. While I worked long hours to move up to lead accountant, Colin changed jobs constantly. First, a sporting goods shop that lasted 7 months. Then, a dating app startup he dumped our savings into, only to be accused of copying the algorithm. After that, an organic cafe chain in Savannah he partnered on, though I never met this so-called partner. Every time he failed, Colin came home with a rehearsed justification. "It's all part of the process, babe. Nobody succeeds without falling first." And every time, I was the one picking up the pieces, pulling from our joint savings, adjusting our retirement plan, quietly rebalancing the budget to cover electricity and water. I thought staying silent was how a good wife preserved her marriage. Then I received an inheritance from Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister. She had no children and lived alone in the mountains of Tennessee, where she owned a small cabin and a patch of land by the lake. Aunt Clara didn't trust online banking or digital wallets, but she trusted me. After she passed away from an unexpected stroke, I was invited to a law office in Knoxville for the will reading. No one expected a woman as modest as her to leave behind over $520,000, along with full ownership of a lakeside cabin overlooking Cherokee Lake. I cried the entire drive back to Charleston, not just because I missed her, but because for the first time in my life, I had something that was fully mine. I told Colin the next evening. His jaw dropped, like a kid who'd just found treasure. "Have you thought about what to do with the money yet? We could invest in a chain of lakeside lodges. That location has real potential." I nodded, pretending to consider. but the gleam in his eyes sent a chill down my spine. That night, for once, I kept part of the truth to myself. 3 weeks later, I flew back to Knoxville to meet Aunt Clara's attorney and her trusted financial advisor, Amelia Rhodes. Amelia was a sharp, composed woman in her early 50s, with a voice that sliced through doubt like a blade. After I explained my concern about asset vulnerability within marriage, she offered a solution. "We can help you set up a separate trust. Under Tennessee law, inherited assets don't have to be split in divorce, if they're protected properly from the start. I've handled similar cases before. Trust me. You should do this now." So I did. The full amount was placed into a private trust in my name at Redmond Trust, a bank with multi-layered security. Any transfer required triple verification, including biometric scans and in-person notarized documents. I left about $20,000 in our joint account for utilities and home maintenance. The rest I never touched. It was my lifeboat, one I hoped I'd never need. But I prepared it like someone who learned early on that love doesn't always come with financial safety. Colin had no idea. He assumed I moved it all to our local bank. I let him believe that. He never asked for details, just occasionally made casual remarks. "You made the password too long. Maybe one day I can help check it for you? See if there's anything we're not optimizing." I would smile and change the subject. I knew if I said too much, I'd reveal something I wasn't ready to admit. Somewhere along the way, belief turned into doubt, and I never said it out loud until now. 4 days later, as I was packing up files to leave the office, my phone rang. The screen read, "Redmond Trust. Fraud Prevention Team." I picked up the phone, heart sinking. "Hello, Mrs. Delilah Anderson. We're calling to verify an unusual transfer attempt from your personal trust to an account in California. The transaction was blocked by our system, and all access has been temporarily locked. Can you confirm whether you initiated this request?" I gripped the phone tightly. "No, I didn't authorize any transfer. Who made the request?" "A male individual claiming to be your legal representative submitted a forged power of attorney and attempted to verify using an incorrect PIN 3 times. The case has been escalated to our internal investigations team." I thanked them and hung up, my heart racing. I knew instantly it was Colin. The only question now was, how far had he gone? 10 minutes later he called. I let it ring 3 times before answering, my tone as calm as if someone had called to say the pizza delivery was late. "Delilah, what the hell is going on? I just got locked out of the bank account. Some woman named Lucia or whatever from Colorado called, saying I'm under investigation for fraud?" His voice barked through the line, no self-control left. What the hell did I do to get locked out? "Do you know anything about this?" I sat down in the armchair in the living room, staring out at the blooming magnolias in the yard, and spoke slowly. "I know, Colin, I know everything. And I also know it was you who tried to transfer the money from the trust." He went silent for a few seconds. "I'm your husband. What the hell are you talking about?" I closed my eyes, steadied my breath, then looked straight ahead as if staring him down. "There is nothing in the law that allows a husband to take inheritance funds held in a separate protected trust, Colin, and impersonating a legal representative, submitting forged documents. Do you have any idea how many crimes you just committed?" His voice started to falter. "Don't threaten me with legal nonsense. We're married." "Yes, and because we're married you should have known boundaries, but you crossed every one of them." I opened my laptop and clicked on a folder labeled Separation Prepared, where I'd stored every document from the past 3 months. "Delilah, come on. You're blowing this way out of proportion. This was just a misunderstanding." I almost laughed. "Misunderstanding? You tried to steal legally protected assets, Colin. I've already spoken to my attorney. And now I'm letting her handle the rest." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. But then, in a shaky, bitter voice, he said, "You're not serious, are you?" "I am, and there's nothing left to negotiate." Then I hung up. I picked up the landline and dialed Eliza Hammond, the family law and financial fraud attorney I had secretly hired back in March. "Eliza, it's time." Her voice didn't sound surprised. "I figured as much. Do you have all the documents ready?" "Everything's in the shared folder on the secure server, including a recording of that call." "Perfect," Eliza said firmly. We'll file for divorce and initiate legal action within the next 3 days. Given the level of fraud and the evidence you've gathered, I'm confident we can secure your full estate. I exhaled slowly, as if something heavy had finally been set down. But the anger still burned. Colin hadn't just broken trust. He gambled his dignity, our marriage and his future, on the assumption I'd never fight back. He was wrong, embarrassingly wrong. On Monday morning, I walked into Eliza Hammond's office on the 8th floor of a glass building in downtown Charleston. No flashy signage, just a small brass plaque engraved with Family Law and Asset Protection. She stood as I entered, shook my hand with firm control, her gaze razor-sharp. Delilah. I've reviewed the initial documents you sent last week. We have a much stronger case than I expected. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder and a USB drive. I brought the rest, including the last 6 months of joint account statements, personal notes, and photos from the private investigator. Eliza raised an eyebrow and took the folder. I didn't realize you'd gone this far. I exhaled. I've had a feeling since January. His sudden increase in business trips, the last-minute schedule changes. But what truly tipped me off was the cologne. Eliza let out a quiet laugh. Smell. He never wore cologne before. Then one day he came home with his collar smelling like bergamot and sandalwood. I knew that scent. It's the one I used to sell during my college part-time job. And only one type of man wears that. Someone trying to impress younger women. Without a word, she began flipping through the documents, eyes scanning each page with focus. I pointed at a section of the statement. Look, here. Starting at the end of January, there are weekly withdrawals, between $400 and $600, from the secondary credit card, spent on restaurants, hotels, airfare. One night he claimed he was at a conference in Atlanta, but the hotel charge came from Myrtle Beach. And it wasn't for a single room. I pulled a set of photographs from the envelope and placed them on the table. Her name is Natalie Carter, 28 years old, bartender at an upscale lounge in Mount Pleasant. I hired a PI named Jared to follow them since April. They've gone on 2 trips together. The most recent was last weekend in Florida. Eliza carefully flipped through each photograph. One showed Colin wrapping his arms around Natalie's waist from behind as they walked out of a resort. Another showed them having dinner on a rooftop in Naples, hands intertwined, completely unashamed. In one, Natalie beamed, holding up a Tiffany necklace, the kind I had never received in 22 years of marriage. Do you have confirmation that he used the joint account to pay for these expenses? Eliza asked. It's all documented in the reconciliation report, and I've already filed a complaint with the bank for unauthorized access. I pulled out another stack of documents. These are recordings of 3 calls Colin made to Redmond Trust from his personal number. In them, he falsely claimed to be my financial representative and tried to get information about the structure of the trust. Eliza put on headphones and played a short clip. Colin's voice came through clearly. I need to verify how the funds were allocated. I'm handling Miss Anderson's estate. After a moment, she removed the headphones. It's unmistakable. From a legal standpoint, this isn't just internal marital fraud. It involves impersonation and an attempt to misappropriate legally protected assets held in trusts. Eliza jotted down a few notes, then looked up. We'll file for divorce on the grounds of financial dishonesty, joint asset misappropriation, and clear evidence of infidelity. With this level of detail, the court won't give him any room to contest. I gave a dry smile. I don't need him to lose. I just need to make sure he can't fool anyone else. Eliza looked at me, half surprised, half impressed. You're one of the few clients who walk in here with everything neatly organized. Clearly, caution is your strength. I gathered the papers and stood up. Caution isn't a strength. For me, it's what's left when blind love finally dies. 2 days after my meeting with Eliza, I received a call from Caitlin Morales, the head of account security at Redmond Trust. Her voice was calm, but every word landed like a scalpel. Good afternoon, Mrs. Anderson. I'm calling to inform you that we've completed our internal verification regarding the recent unauthorized access attempt by an individual named Colin Anderson. I placed my hand on the table and waited. We've forwarded the full case to our internal legal affairs department and have also submitted a formal notification to the Federal Supervisory Oversight Committee. as the incident involves serious signs of identity fraud and an attempt to seize protected personal assets. Additionally, she continued, we've updated your security file. From now on, any access request originating from a device or identity linked to Mr. Colin Anderson will be automatically blocked by the system and flagged to federal authorities. I inhaled deeply. Thank you. Is there anything else I should know? There was a brief pause, then Caitlin lowered her voice. There is one more detail you should be aware of. We discovered that Mr. Anderson visited our Redmond Trust branch in Columbia this past April. At that time, he used falsified documents and claimed to be your financial advisor. He showed up in person? Yes. The intake officer questioned the validity of the paperwork, escalated it to a supervisor, and refused service. The entire incident was documented in our system. However, since no legal action had been initiated on your end at that time, we marked it as an isolated anomaly. Now, with the recent developments, we can identify his behavior as intentional and systematic. I gave a slight nod, as if that confirmation was the final puzzle piece I'd needed. We'll send the full report today to your attorney, including incident logs, security footage, entry timestamps, and scanned copies of the forged documents. I closed my eyes for a few seconds. When I opened them, I spoke clearly. Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you to Redmond Trust. My aunt chose the right place. Mrs. Clara was one of our most special clients, Caitlin replied, her voice softening. I think she'd be proud of the choices her niece is making. After the call, I sat in my office for over 30 minutes, doing nothing, just staring at the black screen of my computer, where my own reflection stared back, sharp, still, and clear. Colin hadn't just broken the law, he'd gambled with federal statutes, and this time, I didn't need to defend myself. The law would handle it for me. That afternoon, Eliza called back, her satisfaction unmistakable. I just received the report from Redmond Trust. It exceeds expectations. We have video, audio, access logs, and security camera images showing Colin arriving with a younger woman, presumably Natalie. I frowned. He brought his mistress to the bank to impersonate me? Apparently so. She waited in the car, but the camera system picked up the license plate and matched it to a rental transaction made with Colin's credit card. In other words, the file is strong enough to press charges for conspiracy to commit federal asset fraud. Eliza paused, then continued. I'll forward this file to the State Department of Justice and coordinate with federal agents to place the case under special monitoring. Given the severity, Colin could be facing federal financial fraud charges. I let the silence stretch, choosing my words carefully. I was picturing the look on Colin's face when he realized everything he did, from texts and calls to physically walking into the bank, had been recorded, archived, and now stood as evidence against him. He wasn't outsmarted, he was exposed by his own choices. Before ending the call, Eliza said, Delilah, I know this isn't easy, but I want you to understand. You're doing the right thing. This isn't just about protecting your assets. It sends a message to anyone who thinks they can manipulate and bypass the law through marriage. I looked out the window. The sky over Charleston was turning gray, but inside me, things were finally becoming clear. On Wednesday morning, as I was organizing files at the office, Jasmine, the admin assistant, knocked lightly and peeked in with a tense expression. Delilah, there are 2 people waiting for you in the conference room. They said they're federal agents and they have a subpoena. I put down my pen, my heart beat steady and slow. I knew this day would come. Without hesitation, I adjusted my collar and followed her down the hallway. The 2 agents were seated in the company's small conference room. A young man in a neatly tailored gray suit, and a woman in her 40s with her brown hair pinned up, sharp-eyed but not cold. They rose from their seats as I stepped in, professionalism etched in every movement. I'm Agent Caroline Reyes, and this is my colleague Agent Mason Clark from the Federal Financial Investigations Office. I shook hands with both of them, then sat across the table, maintaining composure despite the storm brewing inside me. We're here at the request of Redmond Trust, and in coordination with the South Carolina Department of Justice, Caroline began calmly. Are you Delilah Anderson, the legal heir of the estate left by Mrs. Clara Phillips? I'm Clara's niece, I replied, and yes, I'm the sole beneficiary listed in her will. Caroline opened a thick folder and flipped to the first page. We are investigating acts of unauthorized access, identity fraud, and conspiracy to seize federally protected assets. The suspect is Mr. Colin Anderson, your husband. Are you willing to cooperate? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. I've prepared everything. I reached into my bag and pulled out a USB drive and a folder of documents Eliza had duplicated, sliding them across the table. This includes full account statements, evidence of Colin using a secondary credit card to fund his mistress, and recorded calls he made to Redmond Trust. Also included are photographs taken by a private investigator during his recent trip with a woman named Natalie Carter. Mason took the USB, plugged it into his laptop, and began opening folders. Caroline focused on the summary I had prepared. Each page clearly marked date, location, amount, and the direct link to Colin's illegal activities. Had you reported this matter previously? Caroline asked. I started suspecting in January. I began working with an attorney in early April. When I discovered he'd tried to access the trust using forged documents, I immediately reported it to Redmond Trust. They contacted federal authorities. Mason paused on an audio clip, his brow furrowed. I'm the financial representative for Delilah Anderson. I need to review the distribution structure of her inheritance. She's busy and authorized me to handle it. Colin's voice rang out, clear, confident, brazen. Caroline glanced at Mason, then turned to me. Has Mr. Anderson ever been granted financial authority by you? Absolutely not, I replied. All inherited assets were placed in a separate trust, outside marital property. I never shared any authentication codes or internal information with him. Caroline took notes. Fast and precise. After a few minutes she looked up. Delilah, please understand, this is no longer a civil issue. Based on the documentation you've provided and information from the bank, Mr. Colin Anderson is now facing charges including bank fraud, conspiracy, impersonation to access federally protected assets, and unauthorized intrusion into personal financial systems. These are all serious offenses. I didn't blink. Depending on the court's findings, if convicted on all counts, the sentence could be up to 20 years in federal prison, along with financial penalties and permanent credit restrictions. The room went quiet for a moment. I sat up straight, locking eyes with Caroline. I'll fully cooperate. And I don't want someone like him to hurt anyone else ever again. Both agents nodded and began packing up the documents. We'll need you to come to the federal office in the next few days to provide formal testimony and sign additional paperwork. After that, you can leave the rest to us and your attorney. I greeted them with a calm grip and a steady voice, just as I had practiced. Thank you both for taking this seriously. I believe in the law. 3 days later, as I was chopping onions in the kitchen, preparing dinner alone, the phone rang. The screen read, Federal line, no caller ID. I set down the knife, wiped my hands on the kitchen towel, and picked up. The familiar voice of Agent Caroline Reyes came through. Lower, now. Firmer. Mrs. Anderson, I'm calling to inform you that Mr. Colin Anderson was officially arrested this afternoon at Tampa International Airport. I gripped the phone, my heart steady. When? Around 2:30 p.m. he was in the process of boarding a flight to Belize, accompanied by a young woman identified as Natalie Carter. I nodded slightly, eyes drifting to the kitchen window where the golden sunset blanketed the backyard. TSA agents read his rights under suspicion of federal law violations, including financial fraud, impersonation to access protected assets, and tax evasion conspiracy. TSA agents coordinated well, no resistance. But you should know, he was completely blindsided. Colin thought he could outrun the law, outrun consequence, but he never understood. My silence was never surrender. Would you like to receive a copy of the detention record and preliminary investigation report for your attorney? Caroline asked. I would, I said quickly, and thank you for not overlooking the small details that others might have dismissed. Caroline ended the call after a few final remarks. I sat at the kitchen table, picked up the phone, and dialed Eliza Hammond. He's been arrested, I said directly. Eliza didn't sound surprised. I just received confirmation from the federal prosecutor's office. The good news is his detainment will expedite the divorce proceedings. I could hear her flipping through documents on the other end. With the current charges in the file we submitted, Colin has virtually no grounds to contest any of the assets. You are absolutely right to prepare early. He exhaled slowly. What about Natalie Carter? There are no criminal charges against her, at least not for now, but her involvement definitely complicates things for Colin. That evening, I received the first text from an unknown number. What kind of woman are you? Colin loved you for 20 years and you abandoned him when he was at his weakest. I know he's not perfect, but did you really have to destroy his life like this? I didn't need to ask. I knew it was Natalie. The grammar was flawless, but the words were chaotic, coming from someone who had just realized the person she clung to wasn't standing on solid ground. 2 hours later, another message came in, the tone completely different. Please, if you can help him, I'm begging you. He's panicking. They said he might get 10 years. He needs a chance. Everyone makes mistakes. I blocked the number, didn't reply, and forwarded the texts to Eliza with a note. Confirmation of relationship and direct contact from the mistress may be relevant if they seek mitigation. 6 weeks later, I stood in courtroom 2B of the Charleston family court. The air inside was cold and still enough to hear the pages flipping in the clerk's binder. A large screen across from me lit up, displaying Colin's face through a live feed from the Hillsborough County Detention Center. He didn't look like the man I'd lived with for 2 decades. Scruffy beard, unkempt hair, and eyes stripped of their usual arrogance. The orange jumpsuit blurred behind the security glass, just like his place in my life. Distant, faded. The divorce hearing between Mrs. Delilah Anderson and Mr. Colin Anderson will now begin, Judge Aaron McDowell announced firmly. Eliza stood beside me, file neatly tabbed, each page a record of what I'd endured and overcome. Colin remained silent. No defense, no resistance when the judge asked about the terms, relinquishing all claims to property, including the home I lived in, the joint retirement account, and any connection to Aunt Clara's inheritance. He simply nodded and said, I agree. 3 simple words, but to me, they sounded like the closing note to a song that had lost its melody long ago. With the respondent in custody and consenting to all terms, the court hereby grants immediate dissolution of the marriage, the judge declared. Mrs. Anderson retains all clearly defined individual or legally designated assets. Mr. Anderson is denied any claim to the trust, retirement funds, or real estate. Colin lowered his head, no protest. That afternoon, I returned to Redmond Trust for a scheduled meeting with Caitlin Morales, my financial advisor. She greeted me with a soft smile and a large cream envelope. Your financial records have been updated. All accounts are secure and the trust continues to generate steady returns, Caitlin said as I took my seat. Then she slid the envelope forward. And this. A final letter from Mrs. Clara. She asked us to hold it until all legal matters regarding the inheritance were resolved. I opened the envelope and pulled out a handwritten note in violet ink, her familiar steady script as firm as the woman herself. My dearest Delilah, if you're reading this, it means you've survived one of the hardest things a woman can face, betrayal by someone she trusted. I didn't leave you money, I left you a chance. What you build from it is up to you. Remember this. The greatest asset isn't in a vault, it's in the strong heart you carry. Build something beautiful from what's left. With love, Clara. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. I think I know what I want to do next, I said, eyes drifting toward the wide office window where sunset light blanketed Charleston's historic streets. I don't want to retire. I want to open my own accounting practice, a place for women who've lost control over their finances. I want to help them hold on to what I nearly lost. Caitlin smiled. And I believe you will. I used to think losing someone you deeply loved meant losing your foundation. But betrayal was the quake that made me see the truth. It wasn't a foundation. It was rotted brick. I kept patching with trust. Colin thought I would fall apart, that I'd shrink in fear, clinging to a marriage that had been hollow for years. What he never saw coming was this. In 22 quiet years of being a wife and a bookkeeper, I wasn't weak. I was watching. I've seen too many women lose everything because they didn't recognize who was slowly pulling the ground out from beneath them. I refused to be one of them, and thankfully I had Aunt Clara's gift, not a fortune to spend, but a survival plan. The trust she left didn't just protect me from a manipulator. It became proof that a woman can rise from the very place where she was once made to feel small. Cullen wasn't brought down by my anger. He crumbled under his own greed, arrogance, and disregard for the woman who stood beside him for 2 decades. I didn't have to shout. I didn't need to shame him online or stage a dramatic confrontation. I just needed to act at the right time with the right evidence through the right channels. In the end, justice did the rest. Life after divorce isn't loud, as some might imagine. I moved my workspace to the second-floor balcony, where there's light and just enough quiet to hear birdsong as I open my ledgers. I've begun offering personal financial coaching to a small group of women in Charleston, some recently divorced, some laid off, others simply unsure how to manage their money. Not everyone has an Aunt Clara, but if I can pass on a piece of what I've learned, that's the best way I know to build something beautiful from what's left. Every day I'm learning how to live alone, not in loneliness but in agency. I cook what I want. I listen to music no one complains is too slow. I buy cream-colored sheets instead of the cold gray ones he insisted on because they look more professional. Peace didn't come overnight. It came in quiet waves. When I opened a bank statement without suspicious withdrawals. When I walked past the flower shop and let myself buy carnations just because I felt I deserved them. Maybe life doesn't have to start out perfectly. Maybe it's enough to pivot when needed, hold your head high and remember exactly what you're worth, so no one can take away what truly matters. What do you think about how Delilah protected herself and faced betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and inspiring stories about family and resilience.